So, European results are in. Across the board, Greens did pretty damn well. They crushed it in Germany. So, going forwards, while the European Parliament is quite divided, the number of Green MEPs should be able to have a bit of sway and should be able to push more aggressively for more green projects, more renewable energy projects, and more climate change protections, which is a great thing. Domestically, looking at the UK, unfortunately, this was bound to happen. Brexit Party did incredibly well. Now, this pissed me off for a number of reasons, as I've stated before. No one in the Brexit Party is actually wanting to do the fucking job. So now we're spending almost £100,000 on salaries for people who have absolutely no intention of doing their job. Nigel Farage is a career politician. He's been he's been an MEP for donkey's years, and yet he almost never turns up to do his goddamn job. And when he does turn up, he votes against the interests of the UK. For example, the EU wanting to give larger subsidies for small farmers because small farmers in this country are losing money. So the EU thought, oh shit, well, you're losing money, so let's give you money. That way you're not actually losing anything. Nigel Farage, the son of a bitch piece of shit, no, he voted against that. That's the Brexit Party. Also, Claire Fox is now a member of the European Parliament. Claire Fox says to this day that Gary Glitter is not a paedophile yet. We found out a few years ago Gary Glitter is going to Africa and raping children. He is absolutely a paedophile. And yet Claire Fox defends him at every level. Claire Fox wants lesser punishments for convicted paedophiles. And yet people will still tell me that it's because of the EU that we can't lock pedos up for longer. It's not the EU. It's pieces of shit like Claire Fox. But why did the Brexit Party make such massive gains compared to all the other parties? Labour took a massive hit. The Conservatives, massive hit. And that did put a smile on my face. But as Anne Widdecombe, as much as I can't stand that woman, as she said, there was nothing else for the Brexit Party. The Brexit Party was entirely based on Brexit. Now that, again, as I've said, that annoys me because people have voted to pay money for people to do a job who have openly said they're not going to do a job. But this election was more of a symbolic representation of what people want. So again, why did the Brexit Party break out so far ahead? I think while the country is very divided, I think the main reason why there was such a gap is because the right seems to consolidate almost all of their voting views into one or two parties. So if you're a right-winger, you are likely to be a Conservative or one of the offshoots. Nigel Farage is extremely Conservative. He is an extremely Tory Conservative. That can branch off into UKIP or the Brexit Party. However, if you're a left-winger and you wanted to remain in the EU, there are a number of different parties that you would have voted for. Labour, possibly. Corbyn has fucked up. But Labour, possibly. But then you've got the Greens, who had a great night across the board. But then you've got Lib Dems. Now, I can't see myself voting for Lib Dems, considering that over and over again, they back Conservatives. They back universal credits. They back the horror that Tories inflict on this country. But people did vote for the Lib Dems because Lib Dems have made it very, very clear they are the Remain party. And okay, if you did vote for Lib Dem, that's cool, man. That's on you. But again, it's just one of the reasons the Remain campaign is broken into different camps. And if you do put all these different camps together. The Greens, Lib Dems. I'm not going to include Labour into this, but then you've got SNP and you've got the other small groups. All those groups together do outweigh the Brexit Party. But again, the Brexit Party doesn't have a manifesto. They don't have any political ideology. It is separate people's historical events. Like Nigel Farage wants to privatise the NHS. He said this a number of times. As I said a minute ago, Claire Fox essentially wants to give paedophiles free roam to rape as many children as they want, because that's the kind of scumbag she is. Whereas the Remain campaign was very divided. I vote Green at every opportunity, but people didn't just vote Green for remaining in the EU. They also voted Green because they want to see a tougher stance on climate change. They want to see more green projects getting funded. They want to see this future we were all promised as children, and yet because of greedy corporations and Tories, we've been denied it. And again, you've got Lib Dem and SNP and so on and so forth. So what does this actually mean? Not very much in terms of the UK. I mean, look, if we do end up staying in the EU, that's something very different, because then we do have to acknowledge the fact that we've sent over a lot of people to represent us in the European Union who aren't going to be there. Anyone who votes for Nigel Farage has wasted their vote, because that son of a bitch does not turn up when it counts. He does not turn up when it matters. He does not represent this country, but he takes a fucking huge paycheck home. So if we stay in the EU, if we have a second referendum and it goes the way that I personally want it to go, then it's a discussion worth having. But at the moment, being as we're meant to be leaving in October, this was all really symbolic. Remainers were ignored when we signed a petition of over 6 million votes in just a couple of days, just over a weekend. Barely brought up in Parliament, certainly wasn't brought up the way that anything else that gets 10,000 votes is brought up. This was more of a reflection of how people feel. And Labour took a big hit. Labour took a bigger hit than I was expecting. But that's part of the issue. And this has been a good ventilation for people's frustration. Because I like Jeremy Corbyn on a lot of his policies, but he is a Brexiteer. And his personal preferred Brexit is one that isn't possible. Now, when it comes down to something that Anne Widdecombe said, and I want to tag this on because I've just remembered it. She said the next Prime Minister will absolutely be able to get a better deal, or words to that effect. And it was Europe being Europe again, saying that they won't go into talks. This goes into something that I brought up in a previous video: the arrogance and the ego of Conservatives. The fact that they will never own up to their own mistakes. I mean, hell, Theresa May noted that the Grenfell Tower tragedy was one of her proudest moments of how she handled it. Fuck off. Absolute disgusting. And it does fall on Theresa May and Boris Johnson. But when it comes to Anne Widdecombe, this is now putting the blame on Europe. So when things go horribly wrong because we've left the European Union and we're likely to leave with a no deal, I can see that happening very clearly. People like Anne Widdecombe will get on their soapbox and they'll blame the EU. But the EU have been very clear from the get-go. The very start, when this all started, they said, sort the Irish border and everything else is negotiable. We dicked around for 2 years with a number of Brexit politicians saying the Irish border didn't mean a goddamn thing. And then they're surprised when shit goes to the fan. But that's where we're heading. We're heading to a place now where it's all going to go tits up. And Conservatives like Anne Widdecombe, people like Nigel Farage, are going to blame Europe, despite the fact that they have been very transparent from the get-go. And yes, Europe does not want to see us leave, but Europe have been preparing for a no-deal Brexit from day one. We decided to put Chris Grayling in charge of a few incredibly important things. We decided to put Dominic Raab, who had no idea how important Dover was when it comes to imports and exports, in charge of Brexit. Liam Fox, who still doesn't understand why we can't just have a deal with Germany and not the rest of the EU. That's where we're heading. On a positive note, and I only say this because I think it's important to reward good things when they've been said. One of my criticisms of Nigel Farage is that he set this whole thing in motion and then fucked off. At the very least, now he said that him and the Brexit Party want to be part of the discussions and the negotiations. In my opinion, that's way too late. All the discussions and negotiations, they've been and gone. That's it. It's done now. But the fact that he said it, okay, points for saying it, but where have you been since 2016? Right. You've been in Europe making sure that your children have European passports and not English passports. English passports that are made in France as well. Fantastic. Fucking fantastic. But that was it. That was my night. Watching the results come in. For Europe, it's incredibly divisive. We've seen a lot of extreme right groups pop up. This is something that we would be able to mitigate the damage if we were staying in the EU. But we're not. Hopefully, there will be enough aggressive Green members of the European Parliament to push forward much needed climate change and climate protection policies. But we're just going to have to wait and see. So there it is. Enjoy your bank holiday.